Hello, this is Robbie Mitchell here from Head in the Cloud Development. Today I'm going to show you how to use NetSuite's SuiteScript 2.1 API using TypeScript and the SDF extension for VS Code. This video is being recorded in March 2023 on NetSuite version 2023.1. Okay, if you're still here, let's talk a little bit more about what we're going to do in this video. For the setup, I'm going to start from scratch, quickly showing you how to install VS Code, Java, and the SDF extension. From there, we're going to create a NetSuite account customization project. Our project will have two scripts in it. We're going to create an email plugin script that will receive and process an email with an attachment, eventually triggering a saved CSV import via a scheduled script. Part of the fun of what we're going to do is compiling both SuiteScript 1 and SuiteScript 2 code together, since email plugin scripts are only supported in SuiteScript version 1. Sound good? Great. This video is intended for NetSuite developers and administrators. You should have the administrator role in NetSuite to do everything I cover here. And you should at least be familiar with JavaScript and basic web technologies here. I assume you've at least looked at the SuiteScript API before as well. So let's get started. First, we'll download and install a couple of pieces of software. The IDE we'll be using is VS Code by Microsoft. Unlike WebStorm, it is totally free, so let's download it now. I'll go ahead and install VS Code here. Okay, second, we need to have version 17 of the Java SDK installed. Copy this URL. So version 17 of the SDK. Oh, I need to go to Windows. So here I'm installing the Java SDK. So far, so good. Okay, next we need, for our TypeScript modules, we need to have Node.js installed. We can get it at nodejs.org. I recommend downloading whatever the long-term support version is. Here it's 18. Now I'll install Node. Okay, and finally, I've published the code for this video on GitHub, so anybody can download it or contribute to it. Might help with copying and pasting some of what we're doing. So let's go ahead and download this. To download it, you can just click on Code and Download Zip. Okay, so everything's installed. So now let's start VS Code. So first we need to install the Oracle SDF extension here. It's super easy. Just go to the extensions menu and type in Suite Cloud. Should be the only thing that comes up, and just click the little blue install button. And notice it has downloaded dependencies. And so I think we should be good to go. So now we need to create an SDF project. So in VS Code, the Suite Cloud menu is accessed through a thing called the command palette. You can find it in the View menu, or if you press Ctrl-Shift-P. So when you get into the command palette, if you type in Suite Cloud, you'll see all of the related Suite Cloud commands. What we want to do is create project. And it's going to ask you where you want to put it. Okay, it says to select the parent folder to create your new Suite Cloud project. So I'm just going to select Documents. And on the next pop-up, we want to do an account customization project. Next, we have to enter the name. I'll enter contact email to CSV import. Do you want to include unit testing with the Jest testing framework? Nope. Okay, now if it asks you about opening the project, I'm going to choose Open it in this window. Now, when it opens, you might see this message about not having an account access set up yet. Let's handle that. Click on this button. So first, let's log into NetSuite using our default web browser. I'm logged into my account here. Actually, I'm going to start over just to show you in case you missed that. If we go to View, Command Palette, Suite Cloud, we're going to do Set up Account. On the first prompt for an authentication ID, just press Enter to accept the default. Next, select Browser-Based Authentication. When it asks you for your auth ID, you can just enter your name. I'll enter Robbie. So here it's asking about the production domain. I'm just going to press Enter to use the default. And now it should, on my browser, ask me for access. I'm going to click Allow. And then back in VS Code, we should see that it was successfully set up. So that's great. So now VS Code is connected to our NetSuite account. Now let's take just a minute to set up TypeScript. First, let's create a package.json file. And make sure that it gets created at the root level of the project, not inside the source folder. Now the format here is a JSON object, and we really just need one thing, dev dependencies. So what we're doing here is we're pulling in the head in the cloud TypeScript module so we can have the best IntelliSense there is. So the module we need is @hitc NetSuite types. The latest version is currently 2023.1.5. So I'll save this file. And now let's open up our terminal. And we'll run npm install to install this module. Next, let's make sure TypeScript itself is installed. So if you haven't already, run npm install -g TypeScript. Okay, so next we're going to create our TypeScript configuration file. Again, in the root of the menu, let's create a tsconfig.json. And I'm going to copy in our default one just so we have something to start with and something to talk about. So to summarize, what this file says is that it is going to compile anything in the TypeScript folder which we're about to create. It'll compile it into JavaScript, and it'll put it in the file cabinet, Suite Scripts, and I'm going to tell it to put it in the email to CSV import folder. Okay, so now let's create our TypeScripts folder. So to be clear, the TypeScripts are not going to be uploaded to NetSuite. They'll be compiled into JavaScript, which will be uploaded. So now we're finally ready to create some scripts. Let's do a quick recap of the plan. Again, we're going to create an email plugin script to receive an emailed CSV file and then we're going to trigger a scheduled script that will start up a saved CSV import for the file we sent. Now, I really think email plugin scripts don't get the credit they deserve in NetSuite. They are a pretty cool tool, but unfortunately at this point, they're still only implemented in SuiteScript version 1, which poses some challenges for us. That being said, let's actually start here by creating our scheduled script. Now, unlike the more advanced WebStorm SDF plugin, currently there is no way to create a new object here in VS Code. So what that means is that we're going to have to start with the code and then upload that to NetSuite and then use the NetSuite UI to create the script and then download the XML into our SDF project. So to start, let's create a new script in our TypeScripts folder. We'll call it trigger CSV import scheduled script.ts. Now let's set up our block header comment here with the required script tags. The script type here is obviously a scheduled script, and the API version is 2.1. And now let's begin our execute entry point function. Now, if there's one thing I've learned in 14 years of NetSuite development, it is to start small and do things iteratively. That way, when it breaks, which it always does, you will have a much easier time identifying the problem. So to start with here, we're just going to add in an execution log, and then we'll upload and test it. So for that, of course, I need the log module. And we're just going to say log.audit execution complete. What is this? So to compile the code, just run the tsc command in the terminal. Now I got this annoying error. Okay, so to get past this error, for some reason I had to update my execution policy, which I had to do by running an administrator version of the PowerShell, and then I used this set execution policy unrestricted command. This might have been because I installed the user version of VS Code, so hopefully you don't run into this. I didn't run into it last time, but here we are. If it does happen, you can use one of these commands to solve it. Okay, so I'm getting this error because according to my tsconfig, my TypeScript folder is supposed to be in my source folder. I think that does make sense, so I'm going to move it into there. Okay, now my error has gone away, and if I run tsc again, it should have created a file in SuiteScripts. Yep, here's our, so this is our compiled JavaScript of the TypeScript file. So we're doing okay so far. So next we need to upload this project to NetSuite. So we'll use the View menu, Command Palette, and let's choose SuiteCloud Deploy Project. What do you want to do if the project contains account-specific values? Let's just say display a warning and continue. Okay, so that was successful. So now let's go and create our scheduled script in the user interface. And as usual, when I did the authorization earlier, it kicked me out of NetSuite, so I just have to log in again. Now I'll go to Customization, Scripting, Scripts New, and our file is trigger CSV import. And I'll use the values that I put in the header comment here for the name of the script. We'll set the ID to _ trigger CSV import SS. And while we're here, we're going to add a couple of parameters to the script. The first one is we'll set a file ID parameter to say which CSV file we want to import. And second, we'll set a CSV import ID parameter to specify which saved CSV mapping to use. And then we'll click Save. After it's saved, let's go ahead and create a deployment. And now then let's go back to the script and download the XML. So now what we need to do is just drag and drop the XML file we got into the objects folder in our project. So this is the XML representation of the script we just created. So that's a good start. Now let's go add in a few more lines of code to our scheduled script. So first, in order to read the file and the CSV mapping parameters, we need to include the runtime parameter here. Once we have that, we can read in the parameters using runtime.getCurrentScript. Now I'll copy and paste the parameter for my mapping from here. We'll do the same thing to get our file ID. And we can also copy it from here, of course. So this is our file ID parameter. Okay. Now it's probably a good idea to log the values that we have. Next, we need to load the CSV file itself, which means we need the file module. So const import file equals file.load ID file ID. Now it's angry because the file ID could be many things. It could be a string, a number, a boolean. So to solve this, let's just say as string, because we know that both of these are text fields. And that should solve that error. And finally, we need to trigger the CSV import, which means we need the task module. Task type is task.taskType.CSV import. And then we have the import file and the mapping ID. And that should be about it. Now let's talk about how we're going to do the email plugin script. As I mentioned before, there's a complication. It has to be in SweetScript 1. We can still use TypeScript for this, but we have to make sure it gets compiled to match the older version of JavaScript, otherwise it won't work. What this means is that we have to separate SweetScript 1 scripts from SweetScript 2 scripts so that they can be compiled with a separate set of parameters. To do this, I'm going to rename my TypeScripts folder to TypeScripts SSV2, and then I'm going to create another TypeScripts folder for SweetScript 1. When it asks me about updating imports, I'm going to say no because I need to handle that myself in the tsconfig. First, I'm going to create another folder called TypeScripts SSV. Looks like I renamed it to 1, so I'm going to call it 2. Put it in the src folder. And now let's move our scheduled script is SweetScript 2, so I'm going to put it in there. So now let's get started on the script, and then when we're ready to compile it, we'll talk about what needs to be done to handle that. So in the SweetScript 1 folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it email CSV plugin.ts. So in an email plugin script, there has to be a specific entry point. So we'll need to create a function here called process. The function takes one parameter called email. And for a SweetScript 1 script, we can actually add a couple of lines at the top here to tell the compiler where the API specification is for this stuff, because we do actually have it in our NetSuite types module. We have one spec for SweetScript 1 and another one for the email capture plugin. So this should help a bit. So the first thing we want to do in our process function is log the subject of the email. So we'll do nlapi log execution debug process email received with subject email.subject. So right away we notice that we're using some features here that didn't work in the old SweetScript 1 version of JavaScript. So in order to handle this, we basically need to split our tsconfig file to have one configuration for SweetScript 1 and another for SweetScript 2. So let's take our tsconfig file and do a save as to create a tsconfig.ssv1.json. And in our SweetScript 1 config, we're going to delete all the compiler options except for the target. And we're going to set it to ES5 because that's the old version of JavaScript that SweetScript 1 needs to compile to. And below that, we're going to add in a new line called extends. It says that we're extending the main tsconfig.json because most of the configuration can actually remain there. Now we can delete this exclude folder, and let's update our include reference to say that we're going to compile this TypeScript's SSV1 files. Now let's do a save as from here to create our SSV2 configuration. And here we can change ES5 back to ES2020 and change the SSV1 to SSV2. Now back at our base configuration, let's remove the target line because that's what gets specified individually. And we'll remove the include line because that's also specified in the other files. Now let's just try running tsc to see if the compilation works. Okay, it did. And just to be clear, I'm going to delete the old version of my scheduled script that was compiled. And that also means that I'll have to update the path here in the scheduled script objects to say that it's in TypeScript's SSV2. And let's take a quick look at the email plugin JavaScript file to see what the string concatenation looks like here. So instead of using the slanty quotes and the $ curly braces, we're putting two strings together because that's how the old version of JavaScript does it. That's good, so let's keep going. Next in our email plugin script, we'll read the attachments from the email and loop through them. So we'll store our attachments in a variable, and then we'll loop through it. What we want to do here is save each file to the file cabinet. So first we'll put it in a variable. And we'll log the file that we're processing. And before we save it, we need to specify a file cabinet folder. Let's look at our file cabinet folders just for a sec. Okay, I'm going to use -10 because that's the attachments received folder, which makes sense for what we're doing. Now we'll save the file using NLAPI submit file, and then we'll log the file that was created. All right, so the next thing we need to do is trigger our scheduled script to process the file. And before we schedule the script, let's talk about the CSV that we're going to be using. I've created a very simple contact CSV here with just 5 columns on it. First name, last name, email, alternate email, and phone number. Now I'll show you the very simple CSV mapping I've created for this file. It's this top one here, and again, it just has these 5 columns in it. Very simple. So let's get this import ID, cust import contacts from email, and let's store this in a variable. And now we're going to need to call the script, which means I need the script ID. So here we can say NLAPI schedule script. First parameter is the script ID itself. The second is the deployment ID, which I'm going to use blank so that NetSuite auto-selects whichever one's available. And next we need the parameter for the import ID. What we can actually do is if we reference the variable using the parameter name, then we can just use it directly in the object below. The other thing I need, of course, is the file parameter. So let's get that. Now for the file, it's going to be file ID, and then the import is cust script. I'll just copy this guy. Make this a bit wider. And that's it. So let's try deploying the whole project now. First I'm going to compile. There we go. Okay, so now if I go to View, Command Palette, and Deploy Project. Now if you get an error like I did, it tells us the manifest must define the server-side scripting feature is required. So to solve this, we just need to update the manifest with the project dependencies, which there's a command here for. So we do Suite Cloud, add dependency references to the manifest. And then what it'll do is it'll update this manifest file with whatever is required for this project. Okay, so it says it added that feature, so that must be the only one that's required for this project. So good. So now let's try deploying it again. Okay, that was successful. Now, like before, after it's deployed, we need to go manually create our email plugin script. So we'll go to Customization, Plugins, Plugin Implementations, New. And we'll select our email CSV plugin file. It's an email capture plugin, obviously. We'll set the name to email contact CSV plugin. Email contact CSV plugin. Set the status to released. And we'll save it. And like before, we'll download the XML. And then we'll just drop that XML file into our objects folder here. So this is the XML representation of our email plugin script. So finally, before we test it, we have to go to the Manage Plugins screen under Customization, Plugins, Manage Plugins. And we have to switch on our email plugin, and we can copy the email address from here. And click Save. Now I like to add a comment to the script with the email address just to make it easy to access. So I'm going to put it here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to email in this CSV file to the email address I just copied. And let's see what happens. Okay, I just sent the email, so let's see if we can see the execution logs. And we can also look at the scheduled script status to see if that has started up yet. Sometimes it takes just a minute. Okay, there we go. The email came through. So email received with subject test, processing attachment test.csv, and saved file. And after it saved the file, it should have kicked off our scheduled script. Well, that's weird. Nothing seems to be happening here. It doesn't seem to have triggered our script. Well, to troubleshoot, let's add another execution log. I think we can store the instance ID of the scheduled script and then log it. And we'll go to the terminal, compile this. And now when you just need to upload a single file, you can actually go to the file and do View, Command Palette, Suite Cloud, and you can just do Upload File if you just want to do a single file. Okay, that file is uploaded. Let's check one more time. Still nothing here. I'm going to send the file in again and see what happens. Okay, so I just sent the file in again. Give it just a minute. Uh-oh. So look, it seems like it's failing to trigger our scheduled script. Why would that be? What did I get wrong? I'm going to put a condition in my scheduled script and try running it manually to troubleshoot this. Basically, I'm going to make it safe to run without a file or mapping ID parameter. Oh yeah, obviously I need to upload what I've done here. Go to View, Command Palette, Upload File. Then I should be able to run this. Do save and execute. Okay, so that time it completed successfully. Well, to test further, let's try triggering the script without any parameters. I'm going to store that there, and we'll come back to that. So let's compile this. Okay, it doesn't like that I've defined that and not used it, so I'm just going to comment it out for a minute. I'm going to deploy the project again. Okay, so now I'm going to try sending it again, and let's see what happens. Still doesn't look like it processed it. So one other thing we can try is actually using the deployment ID. Put that in here. Try again. Get ready to send my file again. Okay. Let's see what happens now. So now it worked. So that's really interesting. Well, that's fine. I guess if it does want us to use that, we can do that. So I'm going to put my parameters back and let's try it again here. It definitely worked the other day without me specifying the deployment, but nonetheless, let's try it again here. Do upload deploy project, and I'm going to send my file in one last time. Okay, now let's see if it triggers it. Okay, there we go. And then on the scheduled script, we see that we have the file and the import now. And if I check my CSV import status, there's nothing here yet. So what if we take it one step further and store the task instance, and then log that. I'll deploy the project. I'm going to email my file in again. Okay, our scheduled script has been triggered. Ah, I can't believe I forgot that. There's one very important thing. I'm sure you've all spotted it. I need to actually say .submit here. Sorry for all the bumps here. As I mentioned, it will always break. Most of us humans get things wrong, especially while we're doing live recordings. So let's deploy this again. Don't worry, the uploaded version of this script did have this. I didn't make the mistake originally. I'm going to email the file in one last time. Okay, the script, the email plugin is finished, and the scheduled script has triggered the CSV import. And here it is. So it didn't import successfully, but that is not our concern. The point is the scripting worked, so thank goodness. So again, sorry for the bumpy ride. Hopefully this helps you if you ever want to do a CSV import triggered by an email plugin script. So that's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed this demo using NetSuite's SDF module and VS Code with TypeScript. Feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. Thank you for watching. We'll see you at SuiteWorld.